Hi and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project podcast for the 31st of August 2019. This is your host Nigel Creaser, and this month the Sunday Lunch Project manager meets Patti Mclaughlin, the PgMP. But first, a word about sponsorship. This month we're sponsored by my new book. Yes, my new book. The Alexa book I've been banging on about for several months now. Boost Your Brand with Alexa and WordPress is available in the Kindle store or through Kindle Unlimited or the Kindle Owners Lending Library. It's a departure from my usual comedy project management books so far, and this is intended to show people the first steps in voice enabling their brand for their small business, freelance business, club, society, or maybe even a project, and without spending loads of money and time. So if you are interested in that Alexa voice stuff and thinking about how you might be able to do a bit of marketing or do some promotion on that, or if you know someone who might be interested in that kind of thing, then please pass it on. Again, it's called Boost Your Brand with Alexa and WordPress, and there'll be a link in the show notes for you to get it. And remember, the first book, When I Were a Project Manager, is permanently free on Kindle, so grab a copy from there. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, then please get in touch at sundaylunchpmpod@nigelcreaser.com. So in the news, what's been going on? As I said, you probably have just heard, my Alexa book is completed-ish. The Kindle version is done. I'm working through the paperback now. Finished the edit and the formatting, which has been a bit of a pain because I've had to look at how it will look, and there's a limit on the size and shapes. So it's going to be a fairly hefty 8.5 by 8.5 book. And I was going to do it in colour, but the price is a bit prohibitive, so the internal part will be black and white. And I'm just finishing the cover at the moment, which again has proven a bit more time consuming than I'd like. And with the busy holidays and stuff, I'm hoping to get that done and proofed and out middle of next month, so I'm bound to shout about it on this podcast. Talking of the podcast, it's going well. I now have done all of the interviews I need to do for this year, which is great. I was nervous about whether I'd be able to even achieve the one a month and to be in August, and actually I have January's in the bag as well, is really good. I just need to get some more guests now lined up because I haven't got any lined up yet. But I'll start chasing people down after the holidays. And that'll be brilliant. But to let you know what's coming up, we've got Joe Puzz, aka PMO Joe, coming on next month. In October, we've got Mike Clayton, the online PM course guy. And in November, we've got Ron Rosenhead. So they're really good. I mentioned last time I might start adding some additional episodes in. Not done anything with that yet, but keep your eye out. And I'm on that's all there is to do with the podcast. What else is there? I'm just about to go on holiday, so I'm recording this now in middle of August to get it out of the way before I go on holiday. I'm going to tour the south coast of England and the Jurassic coast looking for dinosaurs. And I'll be reading the second part of Colin D. Ellis's book, the project book, which focuses on the vital role of the sponsor. What I've read so far has been quite illuminating because I've not done that role of a sponsor, and I'm not sure I've seen anyone else do the role of a sponsor in the way that Colin talks about it. So anyway, that's all there is. Quite a short one this month even, and so I'm going to let you get on and listen to the interview. Thanks very much, and I'll speak to you after. Bye. So today I'd like to welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project podcast, Patti Mclaughlin. I hope I've said that right. PMP and PgMP. Born in Canada, and after years of living on the East Coast, Patricia, known as Patti, relocated to Evergreen, CO, which I think is Colorado. This is my geography not great, in 2009. Described as a global compliance implementation project and program manager, she enjoys mentoring and sharing industry best practices. She's received a bachelor's degree from Towson University and earned a certificate in project and program management. She's worked at places such as Thalesis, Marriott International and Western Union, and was the 862nd person to obtain the PMI's PgMP, the Program Management Professional Certification, and works in the project management profession and also provides mentoring through the PMI. So welcome to the show, Patti.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Brilliant. So let's start right at the beginning of when Patti appeared in Canada. Where in Canada, and what tell me about Canada in your early times.
Sure. So I was born in Renfrew, Ontario, Canada. It's a little small town about an hour west of Ottawa, the capital. And Renfrew is most known for actually hockey tape. So I'm a big hockey fan, and if you wonder where all those hockey players get their hockey tape from, it's my little town of Renfrew.
So as a Brit over here, obviously you being Canadian, you have to be a hockey fan. I think it's part of the genes, isn't it? But what's hockey tape then?
So hockey tape is used on the hockey sticks, and just helps the hockey players, give them support, have to shoot that puck. And I am a big hockey fan. I have a cousin in my family that played professional hockey for the Calgary Flames, and now we cheer for the New York teams. It's playoff hockey season here in the U.S., and my husband's from New York, so we cheer for the New York teams. But hockey is a big part of our lives, watching it now and going to games.
Brilliant. And did you play hockey yourself?
No, I didn't. I just love watching it and didn't do it myself, but I do enjoy ice skating.
Right. That's a whole I'm like Bambi on ice when I'm ice skating, so that's quite different experiences there. So you said you're in you said New York there, and I said that you'd relocated to Evergreen, CO, which is that Colorado? Is that right? Are you in New York now?
So I do live in Evergreen, Colorado now, and it reminds me, my town reminds me a lot of growing up in Canada, because we just had snow a week ago, so it still comes and goes here. But Evergreen is about 20 minutes away from Denver, and our town's known in the foothills, so we're kind of like, if you heard of some of the big ski resorts in Colorado, like Vail or Breckenridge, you would fly into Denver and kind of pass our town and head up to the ski resorts. So we're usually about 10 degrees cooler than Denver, and it's a nice little town with, we have a lot of wildlife here. Walking through the neighborhood, and it's a nice place to live.
Brilliant. So you say you're there. You've got, and then you mentioned your husband. And I know we were talking before. You have a little one as well. What's family for you then?
Sure. So I have been married to my husband, Ryan, for 6 years. And we have a 2-year-old, he's almost 2.5, son named Torin. And he loves to play. He keeps me busy. We also have a cat and a fish. And all of our parents are back on the East Coast of the U.S. in New York area, Florida, Pennsylvania area, and then the rest of my immediate family also still resides in Canada.
Right. All right. Cool. So you're spread around quite a lot then.
Yes.
Yeah. So you said you grew up in Renfrew. What was it? What was it like growing up in Renfrew, Ontario?
So growing up in Renfrew it was really fun. We spent a lot of time growing up with my grandparents. They had a huge farm, and most
Oh,
weekends were
great.
spent out, playing outside, jumping in hay, gardening, being around animals, just really doing a lot of stuff outside. I know that I love to ride my bike around the neighborhood. Um, I had a lot of friends in school, and the funny thing is, I always remembered going to school almost in a snowsuit. So I think my son's going to be like that too now, growing up in Colorado. But we just, we did a lot of stuff outdoors. And then when I was 12, my mom remarried, and we moved to the U.S. So I relocated with her, and my stepfather, we lived in Maryland. So we moved to Gaithersburg, Maryland at the beginning of seventh grade for me.
Right.
And then I went to high school and college in Maryland, and then moved to Virginia for a couple of years. And then I ended up in Colorado in 2009.
So you've traveled a little bit then?
I have. And I've done, traveled and living different places. And then I also enjoyed traveling kind of years ago before when I had a little bit more time. I've been to Europe a couple of times, and just cruises, vacations, I like to go out and do and see stuff.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So in this time when you were in Renfrew, or when you were in Maryland, what did you want to be when you grew up? Was it a project manager?
No, it's funny when I think about a project manager growing up, I don't even think I knew what a project manager was. I just like,
Yeah.
even through school or college when I was going, it wasn't really an area of study. I don't even think I've knew a project manager or heard that term. So I think when I was really young, when you have like when you go through school, sometimes you have those every year you take a school picture and you get like, what do you want to be? When I look back at those, I think initially I wanted to be a teacher, and then I wanted to be a lawyer, which that didn't pan out. But I think I think when I was in high school, I actually had a really great business teacher, and I was taking like some of the business related classes. And I remember in high school, I won this like little award for my business classes. And I think that's when I really became like interested in more business management and getting an understanding of kind of what goes on in business. And I to this day, I still think one of the most important classes I took in high school was typing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can empathize with that. I remember doing that, and well, back when I was doing it, it was on a mechanical typewriter, but it means that typing emails these days, or status reports, is a bit quicker than some other people I see across the desk sometimes. Which I think it's a benefit. Certainly.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those were kind of my interests. And then then as I moved into college, you try to go into school and pick a major or have an idea of where you should be going. At least I wanted to when I started college. And so then I chose my major to be business administration. And one of the things that we had to pick was kind of a concentration, and it could have been just management, or it could have been marketing, or it could have been human resource management. And I just chose management because I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to do. So that kind of gave me a more general approach of classes I could take and see different areas of business to focus on. And it turned out to be a good major for me going forward.
So you were kind of setting yourself up for project management, but without the project bit.
I was, without knowing what a project manager
Yeah.
was. And, when I think back to those days, I don't, I really don't think I know exactly when I found out what a project manager was, which we'll probably touch on in a little bit. But
Mm.
back in college, I can't say I really knew what one was then.
Yeah, it's not a surprise. It's uh, yeah. I've yet to speak to someone who is uh, well. My children tell me they don't know what I do for a living anyway. So I think it is quite an odd concept, a project manager, as a general thing. So you're saying you did your major in management, and so was that in? So I said Tucson. Is that Towson University? Towson University
It is
that you went?
Towson. Yes.
Towson. I said it wrong.
Towson University, which is in Towson, Maryland, and it's very close to Baltimore.
Right.
So I was there for 4 years and got a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration with my concentration in management. And then, in terms of just education afterwards, once I began working in the project manager role, then I focused on continuing my education with certifications. As you mentioned, my project management professional, my PMP certification, I got that in 2009, and then the program management certification in 2013.
Cool. So you went to you did your business administration. You mentioned that you were thinking about being a lawyer and that didn't work out. Was that something you started to go down towards, or was it just kind of just not something that you thought you would go for? Was that a real one there?
I think it I think just I think there were a couple of things that kind of steered me in the different direction. As I got older, I realized just how much schooling was involved in doing that. And
Yeah.
I think back then, honestly, I wasn't, being a project manager, I've certainly gained more confidence in terms of just communication and speaking. But, there was a point in time where you think about, a teacher speaking in front of a classroom or, a lawyer speaking in front of a courtroom and all those people staring at you.
Yeah.
I think back then I just wasn't, that kind of just, it steered me in a different direction. And I didn't, I think it was, I was looking at business management, or if for the lawyer route, it probably would have been the criminal justice path. And then as I got kind of closer to high school, I figured, well, maybe I'd have more opportunities going the business route.
Yeah, sounds like a logic. There's lots of different twists and turns on what makes us step different ways. So obviously you didn't jump out of university with a project management degree, diving in to do a project manager, and you probably would have struggled to find one. And I see you had a couple of roles before you were project manager. Do you want to tell us about your first role then?
Sure. So, when as I was going through school, when I was in high school, I had an office assistant job. So this was just like a little, kind of just helping out in an office environment. And really, besides babysitting back in the early day, I've always had office jobs. So when I graduated and had my, business administration degree, I was like, okay, well, what do I do now? So I was looking for positions that would match up with my degree and what I've learned. And in college, towards my senior year, I also had an internship. So I had a lot of, office work experience continuously, even on school breaks, just leading up to, now having this degree. And then I was hired, my first job, which was Hanger Orthopedic Group. And it was an orthotics and prosthetics company. And I worked directly for one of the financial controllers. And it was probably like the best position that I could get to kind of lead me in my career path. I learned so much in that position, just from being in a professional office environment. I learned about, financial statements and doing taxes and leases and just a whole variety of financial, duties that a controller does, and assisting with all of those tasks on a daily basis. And after being there for a little while, my controller that I worked directly for told me he was leaving the company, which was very sad at the time because I enjoyed so much working with him and learning from him. And he told me he was going to a company called ExecuStay, which was a corporate housing company at the time. And I thought, oh, wow, that's a good opportunity for him. And, he had suggested to me that, if it was possible, he would like me to join him. And, this job would have been awesome to get because it was much closer to my house. And, I was just a 20-something, person working downtown, having to pay a lot of, bills at the time and living on my own. So to get a job closer to home and not have to pay for parking every day was a great opportunity. And sure enough, he stayed true to his word, and there was open positions at the company, and I was able to apply, and I was able to make the move over to ExecuStay, which was corporate housing, and it was a wonderful move for me.
Brilliant. So how did you, from that, and how did you get into the project management arena? How and why did you jump into that area of business?
Sure. So when I moved over to ExecuStay, I was still kind of in the financial administrator role. I went into the company. I was still doing some of the same tasks I did at my previous company, but I had the opportunity to kind of show my skills to the owners of ExecuStay. And I didn't know it at the time, but their company, they had built the company, and their goal was to grow the company and sell it to Marriott International. And that is what happened. And, being able to kind of work and go through that acquisition was just incredible. There were more opportunities to grow in my role, and the IT department was looking for a business analyst. And at the time, again, I wasn't quite sure what a business analyst did at the time, but I, when I looked at the job description, I had the skills. I had, the degree that they wanted for my, going back to my business administration degree. I had been working in the finance group, and what they were really looking for was for a business analyst to join their team that could help translate requirements from finance to the IT systems. So with my background working in that department and then my education, I applied, and it turned out that I was a good fit. And so from that point on, I kind of joined the IT team, and I learned about what a business analyst does. I did requirements, I did testing, I did business modeling, I did all of this stuff. But most importantly, I was a business analyst on a project team. And that kind of gave me an entry into the project management world, where we did, projects on implementing new system requirements, projects for finance. A lot of our projects were interfaces for the system. And so, I began working with project managers, and through my, years at Marriott, I continued to grow in my career. So I started off in that business analyst position in IT, and then I moved into a systems analyst position. And then from there, just, began more involved in projects, and then had the opportunity to start leading my own projects. And that's how my entry to the PM world really started.
Yeah. So your first, let's go to that first project then. What was that first project? What do you remember about it? And how do you remember the fact that it got handed to you as being, you are the project manager for this piece of work?
Sure. So, one of the first projects I remember being a part of, not necessarily leading, but being a part of, was we were implementing a new property management system in executive stay, and it was called Oscar. And, I was in that position. I was the business analyst. I remember I was gathering requirements. I was chosen to lead all of user acceptance testing for the application, and I had to plan and conduct UAT, and learn processes and everything like that. And it was really a great opportunity to being like the first real project I was involved in. Later on, when I got a chance to lead myself, I moved from executive stay to Marriott headquarters, and I became part of a small but new group called Enterprise Architecture, and I was working with a wonderful mentor and lady who I love dearly to this day, who really, kind of gave me the position, and we were going to build out this new department. And the goal was to develop enterprise processes for all of IT. So a standard way of doing requirements management, a standard way of testing, implementing standard tools and processes. So it was really building it from scratch. And, it was such a great opportunity because we worked with consultants to help us do this. We did presentations, we built toolkits, we gathered metrics. We really had to kind of like develop a framework and then roll it out to all of Marriott IT and prove that it would work. And just to be a part of that project and succeed, and we had the opportunity to share our successes. It was just an awesome experience, and it really allowed me and gave me the confidence to grow in my project management career.
It sounds like you had an absolute whale of a time with that one.
It was very, looking back, I remember all of the work that we put into it, and it was just, and I remember people saying to me too that, that we'd never do it, like that it would, like people would be kind of against it, and we did. And I think that's when I learned that, not everybody likes a project manager. So, and to your point earlier, not everybody knows what project managers do. And, but, the one thing I learned by doing that as well is that, project management is it's more than just a project. I mean, that was a big change management effort. And, that's one thing I think I've carried with me in my career going forward, is that, when you approach a project, I always said that there, I have one job to do, and that's to implement the project. But a lot of times it's really about, it's really a change management effort. And then you implement a new process or project or tool or something like that. But along the way, you really have to get buy-in in order to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always going to be people feeling that they're done to in any project, and there'll be some people who, it's that whole stakeholder pattern, isn't it, of so that the people who don't really care about what your project's doing because to them they're not seeing any benefit of it, other people who see it as a negative and will fight against you, and you've got all those different types of stakeholders. And you don't, when you look at it and you go, well, we're doing it for the business, that for the organization, it's an organizational decision to do it, that not everyone stands behind an organizational decision and supports you, do they?
That is true.
Yeah, so it's fighting those conflicting priorities within organizations. So that was your start with project management. It sounds like from the way you were doing it there, it was very much a project about projects, about getting those projects in place.
It was. We did some pilots. We developed these processes at Marriott, and then we did pilots with two different IT groups within the organization. I remember one was more marketing focused and the other was more financial focused, so we could kind of see the differences between the two areas. We also at the time rolled out tools to help support testing and gather requirements. And we used the Rational tool set to pilot those. And so it was a constantly working with the project teams that were participating on our pilot and getting metrics and feedback from it, while remembering that these individuals still have their daily jobs. So they were helping us out with these pilot projects, and then and still doing their day-to-day work. But we took all of that and we had to try to show adoption of our framework. And once we successfully came up with our requirements management framework and processes, then we moved on to testing. So we knew the rate of project success and failure depended a lot on requirements. And then after requirements, we focused on testing within the SDLC framework, because that was another area where we could definitely use help. So we were kind of tackling each of the different processes, and it was just really, looking back, it's just really exciting that we were able to do all that work really from scratch.
Excellent. So looking on your LinkedIn profile, I see that there's a few places you've been since Marriott, and what maybe it was the Marriott one, I don't know, what would you say would be the largest piece or project piece of work that you've done, or program work? And when I say largest, whether that would be whatever the metric you use, whether that was financial costs, whether that's number of man days or amount of business change that you've implemented as part of it, what would you say to you felt like the biggest piece, the biggest project you've had, and importantly, what did you learn from it when you were implementing that?
Sure. So when I moved to Colorado, I went to work for Western Union in their corporate office, and I went to work in a PMO, a project management organization, in compliance. And one of the, this is really, I think, where a lot of my experience leading from project management into program management also expanded. So I worked on a global rollout to implement data integrity rules for Western Union. And really what that means, in I guess the most simplest terms, is that if a customer goes to do a transaction for Western Union, there's certain bits of information that customer has to provide, whether you're sending money or receiving money. And depending on, we want to make sure that the company is capturing accurate information. So we have accurate data in our system. So for example, if your credit card number has to be a certain number of digits, we would validate that. If a driver's license, is a certain number of digits, each field when you're doing a transaction, we would validate the information that was in there. And so we came up with this project where we were going to put in data integrity rules so that the information that we were capturing was accurate and that, our systems weren't going to get flooded with bad information. And we did this, and we did it per country. So, Western Union is a global company, and I worked with countries from, India to Poland to Austria to, countries all over the world. And it was a large effort. What we did is we developed a roadmap of what countries we were going to implement these rules. We would have to work with the partners in those countries, to identify, what type of rules needed to be in place, what kind of regulations are in those countries, what we could implement, what we couldn't. A name in the U.S. May be very different than a name in Brazil, for example, like capturing that information. Mm-hmm. So it was a huge rollout effort. And in terms of just planning, in terms of time, in terms of working with all of those global counterparts. And it was a really great experience. For me personally, as a project manager, I learned so much working on this project. I learned what I needed to do. I learned a lot of times what I needed to learn or what not to do. And, it's just, it really, to this day, I still have some relationships with some of those people in different countries that I worked with. And a lot of it, I've never met them. You have to kind of build those relationships over the phone or through video chat and back then we weren't actively using video chat, just conference calls. So, but it really is a project that I'm very proud of.
Excellent. So let's flip it on the other side. What is the biggest project screw up that you've had, and what did you learn from it? I always like this question, by the way. I like to hear.
Well,
I like to hear people squirm.
Let me think about this for a minute. So there's, one thing that I've learned in terms of project screw ups and planning and everything is, things don't always go according to plan. So one thing that I really learned, especially working in a global environment, is that, you have to think that when you're planning stuff, a lot of companies have, especially in IT, a lot of companies have freeze periods where they don't roll out code into production. Mm-hmm. So I remember planning an entire rollout, planning a project, and then, afterwards learning from other IT counterparts that, well, we can't roll out anything, in between Christmas and New Year's because, it's a holiday period, or we can't release anything in January because a lot of our development team is offshore and it's a holiday in the country. So there's been a lot of different things where, you plan out projects for me, and then I learn from a global perspective, there's some major thing happening in that country. I know for Western Union in particular, Mother's Day, which just passed for us, is a huge holiday. And, when you think about the big holidays, as a young project manager, you think about Christmas or, maybe Thanksgiving, but you don't really think about, I didn't really think about Mother's Day as being that.
So how come Mother's Day is such a big one for that then? What drives that? Is it
because
just
I think everyone, everyone that uses the services sends money to their moms, and
I
or
see.
a lot of transactions are exchanged during that time, which I didn't think about, but again, there was, Western Union had freeze periods where we did not release code. So if you had your project, if you had a project that needed to be implemented in order for the Mother's Day holiday, you had to plan to get it into production with enough time to make sure it was working, prior to May, and, and that there were no errors. And then as a result, if you had a project that was due to go into production, let's say May 1st, it was not going to go in because it was too close to that Mother's Day holiday. So
Yeah.
that was one that I had to kind of learn what the, what are the significant code releases for a company, or the environment that you're working in, what impacts you. And I don't think that's sometimes not necessarily a problem with maybe smaller companies, but from a global perspective, some of the resources that I used were um, a world calendar, learning time zones, being considerate of other employees that you're working with in other countries. I mean, really simply to even understanding when they take lunch,
Yeah.
because
I suppose, yeah,
the
with
last
Europe, you get quite big chunks of time where people take long lunches, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's just different. And the one thing that I learned is you just, that's why when you're working with other people or you're talking with other people in other cultures or other environments, it's best to really take the time as a PM to get to know them or ask them those questions that may just seem obvious, but it doesn't. And when you're working with them, and you don't send them a meeting request when it's their time to go home, or when they're usually eating. I mean, those are simple things that you learn along the way, but sometimes they're overlooked if you're not aware of it.
Hmm. Yeah, some interesting advice there. So let's go back to the positive. Let's away from the screw up type stuff. What would you say, and maybe you've alluded to it before, what would you say is your proudest project delivery?
My proudest project delivery. Let's see. Well, I have a lot of them. I mean, some of them I've already mentioned.
Yeah.
It's funny. Like I love working on the compliance projects that I've talked to. I have this expression though that I want to share with you because I think it's funny, and but I also think it's true. So I've worked a lot in regulatory environments, even in pretty much in a lot of my positions, because they've been financial services industry, and within the financial services
Yeah.
industry there's a lot of regulatory requirements. But I have this saying which I think is a little bit funny, but I always say there's no glory in regulatory. and, and the reason for that is because you have to do the project. Like, these projects aren't the ones that are going to win the awards and
Yeah, I know what
be
you mean.
customer focused, but they are the ones that you have to do so that you don't get fined by the regulators.
Yeah.
So, but that's that's just always been my saying, where I like the regulatory projects because you get the resources you need, you have to implement by a certain date, and a lot of times you have to back into it. But in one of my last positions, a project that I am proud of is that I was working in kind of a project manager, product manager role, and we were implementing a new project management tool into our organization called MavenLink. And I remember I was off work one day, and I came back to work, just a personal day. I came back to work, and I was asked or kind of told that I was going to just implement this tool in our organization. And that's kind of all I got. Like, I was like, here's the tool. This is what we selected. Now, Patty, you're going to implement it in our organization. And I wasn't involved in the evaluation of the project management tools, but it was now my job to, roll it out. And I'm proud of this. I'm proud that we did it, and we did implement the tool in Talysis. It was, it was really kind of given to me to plan, and it allowed me to use all of my skills, everything that I've learned, kind of from being a PM, to just how was I going to do it? How was I going to form a work group, kind of put together a timeline, work directly with the vendor, work with security, work with IT, work with all the different departments, and then also know that this was going to be a big change management effort. So I had help with different, employees within the organization, and we did it. We put together our training. We worked with everyone, and we did the rollout, and they're still using it today. Everything is going well. I became an administrator for the tool too, and we were able to celebrate our successes too. Once we got it implemented, we all went to Coors Field and enjoyed a great baseball game in the summertime. And so,
excellent.
Yeah, it took us, about 6 to 9 months to implement, but I was really proud of it because it was adopted well. It was successful. It was, everybody's continuing to use it. And, it was something that I wasn't given much direction on how to do it. I was able, and I was supported by the leaders in our organization on how to roll it out and how to get everyone to adopt using it.
Yeah, I think that's it, is when you've got something that's dropped on you, and being able to, and not being part of the solution, the choosing of it, it can be a poison chalice, it can be seen as, can't it? And it's being able to turn that around into a positive is a really good job there. So looking outside of project delivery, but related to your projects, what would you say was your proudest project achievement? That, as I say, not necessarily the delivery itself, but is there anything that stands out that you can think of?
From a project achievement, just I want to answer this question. I know it is a good question. It's a very good question, and I want to answer it, a couple of different ways, because obviously implementing a project and having it closed out is great. But along the way, project achievements, I really feel pride in having the ability to work with project teams that really don't know me, and have the ability to really gain their trust and to, work together to come to an endpoint and implement the solution. And I'm not quite sure if I'm saying this, the right way, but I really feel like pride in, being able to lead the teams, but allow each of those individual skills of my project team members to come through. Because I think that, as a PM, I've learned that, all my project team members are more skilled and more knowledgeable than me in their areas. And it's not my job to know what they do. It's just my job to lead and get us to the end solution. So I really feel, pride in that we can work together, or that we can, just come together to resolve solutions and move forward. Personally, from a achievement point of view, I find a lot of my own personal achievement in seeing like everybody succeed, but then also I have pride in the success that I've been able to do in terms of achieving my certifications, and now kind of going and as you mentioned, I've been involved in mentoring, and so being able to share kind of my skills with others.
Yeah, that sounds. It does sound, because I think earlier on when you were talking about the Western Union one, where you had your relationships that you'd built with people around the world, and I'm guessing it's kind of the lens to this is that being able to because as you say, they are part of your project team, matrixed and got their day jobs as well, and being able to get the trust and commitment from people who have other things that are probably just as much noise and priority going in. I can see how that can be, that can make you feel like that.
Yes, it's really great, and it's really great, especially when you have the opportunity to meet them, meet them in person. And a lot of those global leaders would come to Western Union, the corporate office, sometimes, and travel there, and I'd have a chance to meet them. There was one time where I had the opportunity to travel to Germany, and I worked a lot with the German team, and got to meet people, in person. And if I ever have the opportunity, even now, whether it be mentoring or work or meet people in person, I definitely take that opportunity, because there's just it's great to be able to communicate over the phone or video, everything like that. But it's really important if you can talk face to face too.
Yeah, it's still the thing that you find is such a massive difference between any other way of interacting with someone, physically being sat there across the desk or across a cup of coffee chatting. The relationship building is exponential on how much better it can be done than compared to being on the phone, I always find. And I've had the same sort of experience when, as soon as you meet someone and you have a chat and you get to know them, the next conversations on the video or on the phone just are so much easier and smoother to deal with from both sides, I find. So the next question I've got relates really to how I first heard of you, which was it was a LinkedIn post from someone. I can't recall who. I guess it. No, I can't recall who. I'm not going to try and give someone the credit or of it. Which shared a article that you wrote on a blog called proprojectmanager.com, and it was about your journey to the PgMP certification, and I found it really a really entertaining read, and hence the reason I reached out to have a chat, and also the fact that how really honest the blog was on there and about the journey on there. So do you want to just talk to that and just tell us paraphrase that a little bit?
Sure. Well, thank you for those kind words. So, I became a PMP in 2009, and then in 2013, I had a goal, a performance goal. I was working at Western Union, and I had a performance goal to get a certification. So a lot of my peers were going to try to achieve the PMP. For me, I already had that one, so I had to do something else. And, I had already been working more and managing programs, and thought, well, I knew that PMI had started a new certification for program management. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I could achieve this. Maybe I could do that. So I researched it and found out that I had enough educational hours and experience that I could be qualified to apply for it. And so I decided to pursue that and select that certification to go for. And so, after going through the PMP, I've never been one, I don't think anybody loves taking tests, but I've never been one to like standardized tests, but I thought, okay, well, it's part of the journey. I did the PMP. It can't be that much different. And it really was. The program management or PgMP application was definitely more intense. It started out where you do the application online, and then you have to kind of write experience summaries or essays of your program management experience. And with very minimal words, you have to do this and see if they'll be accepted for you to move on, the online application. And so, after those are submitted, your application can be randomly selected for audit, which I was a lucky one, and it was selected for audit. So, you have to submit basically proof of everything that you've put in your application. And, once you complete that audit, they tell you if you can move on. And then
So on that proof, just sorry to interrupt.
Yes, no, go ahead.
With the proof, what did you do? What was the proof? Was that testimonial from people who you worked with or worked for around those pieces of work? Or
yes. So from an education point of view, from my college transcript, basically, and then for the summaries that I had to write, I had to select programs and write what I did, how I managed them, how I managed the programs. And so for those summaries, I had to put down the contact information of my direct manager, and they had to basically verify what I had written to be true, but without my involvement, if that makes sense. So that, they basically are mailed a copy of what I've submitted, and then they have to kind of agree and certify that the information is correct.
Okay. So, sorry. Yeah, it was just curiosity there on how they did that.
Yeah, and it's there's really, when you're filling out that application, there should be nothing you should worry about. It's just that it kind of delays the whole process. And you have 90 days to submit the documentation. But then with the program management exam, so step one was the application and the summaries. Step two was the audit for me. Most people don't have to go through that, but I did. And then step three was an evaluation panel. So, basically PMI has a panel of individuals that would read these experience summaries to determine if, what I've submitted is valid program management experience in order to move forward with the certification process. So, these are individuals that don't know me. They're just reading what I wrote in 350 words. Yeah. And would they approve, would a panel of my peers, approve me to move on? And, they give you tips, when you're applying for the exam, they give you tips on how you should write your summaries, meaning that it should be from your point of view, like what I specifically did in managing my programs, not kind of what my projects teams did, but really my own true experience. And so, luckily, those were approved. And then I was ready to take, I was qualified and ready to schedule a time for the exam. So I studied and studied, and, I had the book, I had multiple books, I had exam test questions. I felt ready to take the exam, and I failed, and I was devastated. I couldn't believe I failed, honestly. I passed the PMP on the first try. I wasn't really, I don't know. To be honest, I just wasn't used to failing. I did well in school, and I really don't even know what went wrong. And I was devastated because here I was, I had, this work performance goal. Everybody at work knew I was taking the exam. I had to go back to work. I had to, I had to tell my director, who originally, when I was taking this exam, originally this is the man who hired me into Western Union. So I was just like terrified and upset and just so scared to even go into work. It was just horrible. Like I couldn't believe this happened to me. And then
It sounds like you beat yourself up quite a lot there.
yeah, looking back, like it's just, it was just hard. And then I will never forget what he said to me. Like I went and was in his office, and here is, my director with, more older than me, more work experience than me, someone I truly respect. And he said to me, he's like, Patty, you tried. He's like, that's more than what I did. He's like, you tried. You can do it again. You can try again. Um, and it just, I don't know, it just really bothered me for a while. Like I just kind of had to like walk away from it and just, kind of get over people asking me about it and just, I don't know, move on. But I really wasn't, I gave myself a little bit of time, and then I decided I was going to try again. But I knew that if I was going to take it again, I needed a better way. I needed to figure out something. I don't know. I just needed to figure out something else. So I did some research with some people that had passed the exam, and I was very new and the certification was new, and I was really new in the process of taking it. And so I did some reading, got some tips from people that had passed, and one person or several people had actually suggested reading the standards book 6 times. And it is, I was like, how can I read this 6 times? Like, I think for the first time, I actually read the book about 2 times. And I was like, how can I read this book 6 times? How am I going to do this? But I knew I had to do something different. I had to, I really had to do something different. So I set out and to read that book 6 times. And I put that book on the treadmill, and I didn't put this in my article, but I honestly think I lost like 5-10 pounds on the treadmill reading that book.
That's unusual, isn't it? Losing weight while reading.
It was win-win because I ended up taking the test again, and this time I passed, and I had lost weight. It was just it's funny though. After reading that book multiple times, the information kind of it's stuck a different way. And it's hard to put it in words, but it's like I knew it. I knew it backwards and forwards. I knew what the standards were. And I was so much more confident taking the exam again. And I ended up passing and getting my certification, and it was a great feeling. I remember being so nervous to go in there and take it again, but I passed the exam, but I still wasn't done. Like this is the thing. Now this is a part where no longer a PMI has taken the last step that I had to go through out of the exam process now, but when I took it, there was a step called the multi-rater assessment. And I had to put down my peers and managers and directors. I had to give them a list of references that could really do kind of like a 360 review of my progress. And at the time, all of those individuals had to respond. So they would get an email and have to complete a survey for me. And if one of them didn't respond, then my certification could have been in jeopardy.
So did they give you a number that you had to nominate? A number of people, a general?
I think it was almost, I don't exactly remember how many people it was, but it was close. I want to say it was somewhere between like 5 and 10 people.
It's a lot of people to corral, isn't it?
It was. And, one thing with, one thing that I put in my article was that it's, you work with people and sometimes you don't talk to them for a while, or you leave a company and you don't stay in touch with people. And when you're applying for certifications down the road, it's really important that you keep in touch and have these references.
That's why I love LinkedIn.
Yes. Yes. And, and I remember actually I had one of my managers, he was out of the country in, vacation with his family. And when I finally got in touch with him, he's like, I just got back. I'll do it, but I mean, it was, I've gone through all of this, and I really didn't want, the lack of response by someone who didn't see an email or, to jeopardize the whole process. And so
it's funny because you would have thought with that sort of thing, maybe it's timing, and that with that sort of thing, you could kick it off at the beginning of the process, couldn't you? Really, you could have, if you know, what I mean, you could have had that if they'd said, right, those that alongside everything else, it's a what's the name, Survey Monkey thing, isn't it? And just have one of those sat on the side as people go through it, and you chase them through the whole process. And then if you don't get to the end, well, some people have done some stuff for you, but if you do, it would have saved some time, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I know. And I'm not certain as to why PMI no longer requires this evaluation at the end, but I certainly support them removing it.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is with that is you think about it. You think, well, you're never going to choose people who aren't going to support you. It's like references, isn't it, on a CV?
Right.
You choose people who you know and trust, and have a good opinion of you, and you would have spoken to them and said, I'm doing this, please can you help me? So what is going to happen other than tripping up a few people who have probably got the experience and validity of having it, just because someone, as you say, misses an email or is off on holiday in the timescale? So it probably just stopped people getting it rather than making sure the people getting it was a valid evaluation, really, isn't it? Probably doing the opposite.
Yeah. So, I'm not sure, but luckily all of my references supported me, and, then you get notification where my certification was granted. So, in my article, I have wrote that, the first time that I failed, I mean, those results, those test results are on your PMI profile. So, if I log in to my profile after our call, I see the date that I failed, and I also see the date that I passed that exam. Everything's permanently saved there. So that was, it was nice to see that that pass, passing the exam. And then, fortunately, I was asked after I passed and got my certification, I was asked by PMI to attend an exam workshop. And it ended up being in Las Vegas, which was super fun. And I got to go and help review and write future exam test questions. So that was pretty cool because, I felt like I felt so great that I had passed the exam, and then to be able to give back to give back and help support others who are taking the exam. It would be, it was just an awesome opportunity. And, with all that I went through to get this particular certification, I'm proud of it. It was a hard road to get there. If I started mentoring for PMI recently, and I met the lady who asked me to write an article for her blog, at my mentoring event, because she had never really met another PgMP in person. It's something that I don't.
There's not many of you around, is there?
No, there isn't. I mean, I personally have not met another person, even in my town who has the certification. There's people all over the world that have it, but I mean, it's a small number of us. So she had really, she said that it was not something that she could ever write about. And she asked me to share my story. And I would never have been in the right mindset to do it, especially when I was taking the exam or failed the exam. But, I thought maybe it would be a good story to share, because and some of the comments that I've received after writing that article is that, a lot of people share their successes. And that's awesome to do. But a lot of people don't share, their failures and then keep trying and then share their successes. So when I had the opportunity to do so, I thought, why not? Maybe it'll help somebody else to not give up and really achieve what they want to achieve.
That's and that, yeah, and I kind of got that when I read it. It was, as you say, an unusual, as I said, an honest view of how you felt there. It's not often that people will admit to being as upset about something like this. And I know it's all to do with how much effort you've put in and things like that. And the question I kind of asked you when you had that thing, and I know it's like the PMP, isn't it? It's that you hover with your finger over the mouse button, over the complete button, and yeah, your heart is in your mouth, isn't it? Each time, because you regardless of how you feel, you're never sure on these things. And so you clicked it that first time, and the way you felt, you were crying and you were terrified of going into work. What can you remember that? Whilst obviously it was positive, when you clicked that button and it came up pass. What was that feeling like?
Oh my God, it was awesome. Like I remember, like, you're in a testing center, okay? So like literally that day I'm driving to the testing center. I'm going in the same testing center, that I failed the first time, right?
Jaws music playing in the background.
No. So what happens is, like, you take all the exam questions, right? And then the computer, like, you're sitting in front of this computer, and literally, like, it's almost like the computer is thinking, because it's like the screen turns blue, and it's almost like you can hear it, like, just like, I don't know. It's like it turned blue. It was completely like almost blue screen of whatever, and then all of a sudden it came up pass, and I was like, oh my God, like, thank goodness. It was just, honestly, I think it was such a sense of relief, and I was just like, I just couldn't even, I was just so thankful that that this time I passed. And you kind of you can leave the testing center because it's all secure. So like you can get up from the computer and you walk out, and they give you a piece of paper, because I think the challenging thing with the PMI tests are they never, you never walk out of there knowing how many questions you got right and how many questions you got wrong. There's certain domains, like areas of focus. And so you're either proficient, you're moderately proficient, or you're low proficient. So, I don't know if I failed the first test because of one question or 20. You just don't know. And so, kind of like what areas you did better on than not. And it evens out to determine whether or not you pass or fail. But I just remember, like, getting that printout, a piece of paper, and then you have to lock everything up. So you gather your things, and then you get in the car, and you this time calling my family and saying, I passed, oh my God, just a completely different experience.
That's brilliant. That's a fantastic story. It's a fantastic story. So we've been talking now for well over an hour. I really appreciate you giving me so much time. It's fantastic, and and my listeners so much time as well. There's a few quick questions I want to just wrap up.
Sure.
What was the last project related podcast you listen to? If you listen to podcasts.
I do listen to some podcasts. Sometimes it's hard with my little one running around the house all the time. But the last project podcast that I listened to was actually yours.
I'll send the $5 in the post. Yeah, brilliant. What was the last project blog that you read?
The last project blog that I read was, I do a lot of reading on LinkedIn and the PMI sites. I don't, I just kind of like get the daily updates and reading about changes to upcoming I try to stay on top of certifications and like what's changing in the PMI world. I know PMI is going through an effort now to do testing of different certifications using a new testing center, and maybe allowing individuals to do some of the testing from home, which I thought was interesting. So those are some of the areas I've read lately.
All right, cool. And last two questions then. What would be your top tip for a seasoned PM that's out there? Someone pretty experienced, something that you may have gone through and thought, oh, yeah, that's something I've forgotten.
Sure. So I think my top tip to a seasoned PM is really that you're never too busy to keep learning, even if it's in a different way when life changes. So personally, my PM career changed when I had my son. He's almost 2.5, and I went from working as a full-time PM program manager to right now I'm home with him full-time. But I've continued to use my PM skills through volunteering, through mentoring. I'm giving back to my profession just in a different way right now. And I have my skills available one day when I do, if I decide, to go back and be able to work in a full-time capacity. But I really think it's important to keep learning and also keep your certifications active, because you work too hard, when you achieve them. You don't want to give that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the final question, if you were going to tell your younger self something on that first day, on that first project that you realized you were the project manager, what single nugget of advice would you give yourself?
So I touched on this earlier, but it's still something that I believe in every day, is that building relationships is so important in project management. Don't be afraid to walk and talk with like all levels of management. One thing I always tell younger PMs is ask people what their preferred communication style is. Do you want me to stop by my office? Do you want to text me? Do you want to email me, phone? Just really get to know people and trust your project team members, because they know their roles and what they do better than you do. So you really just need to, trust your team, get to know them, learn from them, and then lastly, make sure that you celebrate with them.
Brilliant. Well, that wraps up the interview. If people wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you, or maybe on your mentoring, or just to find out more about what you went through on the PgMP?
My information is available on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect with anyone who reaches out to me. Please do. I love talking with people and getting to know people, and if I can help others, I certainly will.
Brilliant. Well, all I say is thank you very much again for giving me so much time. It's been a really entertaining interview, and I'll let you get back to the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So many thanks to Patti, and good luck to anyone trying to get their PgMP. It looks like a bit of a struggle there, but from listening to Patti, it's well worth it. And all it leaves for me to say is, if you know anyone interested in taking part on the Project Management Podcast, please get them to get in touch with me at Sunday Lunch pmpod@nigelcreaser.com. If you've got any questions, you can ping it to the same email address, or get hold of me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc., 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 with the handle Sunday Lunch PM. And as ever, if you want to support the show, the easiest way is share it. The next easiest is 5-star reviews on whatever platform you listen to. Grab a copy of When I Were a Project Manager, or grab a copy of Project Management The Sketches. Support me on Patreon. But more importantly, as I always say, come back next time and listen again. And remember, project management is funny. And don't forget that hashtag. Bye now. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.